So talk about where does the story take place in Diablo 4? Is it a direct sequel after 3 or after the Reaper expansion? Like where does it take place?
Sure. So I'm so not the lore guy, but I know I think it's 1,000, maybe 2,000 years after. I don't want to stick to that, but I know it's after D3, and basically all we know is Lilith has returned, and I do not want to spoil anything further for you.
Yeah. We see fan favorites make a return. Tyrael, Angels, where are they? What's going on?
Can't say. Yeah, too early to know.
Sorry?
Oh yeah, lore panel.
Oh yes, there is a lore panel tomorrow at I believe 3:15.
When Mathiel betrayed Enap at the Battle of the Bulge, what did he... No, I'm just kidding. You're like, what? Like,
This sounds accurate.
This sounds good. I'll just fly this. I'll put it in the game later.
I make effects, but that sounds right.
So, speaking of effects, talk about like how advances in technology, with the Rex X, I think, is it 13 or 12? I can't even keep track anymore. Yes. And like ray tracing, what does that open up for you creatively with having all this power you can like utilize now to have like a million things on screen and a million things happening at once?
Oh man, there's so many things. I could talk about this for days. We got time of day, we got weather. The biggest change I think is we switched to a PBR engine. So we made a new engine. PBR is physically based rendering, and what that allows us to do is render things in a more realistic way. So if you look at previous Diablo games, they are more painterly, and I think this lets us take things to the next level. So if you're looking at metal or skin or blood, it just looks way more real. Yeah, fur, hair. So I think that's like baseline. The entire game is affected by that. We have hills in the game now.
Yeah, we actually have like three-dimensional terrain, so like
you can jump over it and stuff.
Yeah, and also like when you go into a dungeon and you start traversing down, like you don't have to hit like a loading screen to go to another level. Like you just keep going into that dungeon, and it feels great because it feels like real 3D now. Like you're actually in the environment. It's great.
We have all sorts of physics, so you can launch a boulder off a cliff and have it land on a monster and crush him into a gory puddle.
I mean, if you saw in the gameplay trailer, like the barb like kicks that goat man off the cliff and he goes like flying off the hill.
Right
like,
off.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yes, lights is another big thing. So the world is definitely darker, and I think the deeper you go into the world, it can become pitch black. So certain characters will have lights on their skills depending on the school of magic you're using. So if you shoot a fireball into the dark unknown, it just lights up everything, and I think that feels really special.
The environment all reacts to it and everything. It looks fantastic.
There's different perspectives, obviously, in games: first person, third person, isometric. Is that easier or harder to animate and create things in that viewpoint? Because you have a camera that's higher, but you're not you're not 2 feet from it.
I think everything offers an awesome set of like challenges, like no matter what you're doing, and like isometric is no different compared to like something else. Like there's going to be these things that you can like kind of take advantage of and go, oh, like I can make this work, and there's other things that are like this is actually really hard here. It really just depends on like kind of like what you're working on and what those kind of those circumstances around what you're doing like they are, but they all have their pros and cons. We feel that the isometric camera is like a really big part of Diablo, and for us who've been here for a long time, really know how to like make that stuff work. Like so, like for animations, for example, like we really rely on like posing, timing, and like readability to really allow for that to work from that camera because it's farther up. Like so sometimes we don't get all the little details in there, but you don't necessarily need it. But what we do want to make sure is like pose is really strong, because that's what you see from like the camera at being at that level. And I think all disciplines kind of go through this thing of like what really matters right now.
So yeah, game cam is super important to us, and I think you really got to figure out. We want to hit this dark tone. So what do we exaggerate? What is exaggerating it too far? Mm-hmm. And we also, as you're using your characters, we want it to feel like you're progressing as you go through the game, and even using your skills. We don't want your basic abilities to feel like your ultimate abilities. So even within the game, we need to stick to that game cam rule and try to make it feel like things level up as you're playing.
So, as obviously an effects artist, you work really in depth with systems. I need to know your opinion on ray tracing. Do you think it's the future of gaming? Do you think it's a current fad? Do you think it's just the hot thing right now? Like what?
Sure. So I think that is a very technical thing, and I think it definitely depends on what type of game you're making. So I think it has its pros and cons, and it really depends on what situation you are in. So beyond that, I don't have a lot to say about it. It's really just
it's cool, but
that you can use, and I think from game cam, sometimes tech is really useful. Sometimes you need to fake things, right? So it's really like what's the the best, I guess, weapon in my arsenal that I can use.
Yeah, nice.
The Diablo franchise is at its core a dungeon crawler. It was one of the first dungeon crawlers. What do you think is about that genre that's had it withstand the test of time for over 25 years?
Oh, yeah, I think there's just something innately awesome about, delving into the unknown, finding awesome items, and killing and destroying evil, that's trying to stop you from getting that. I think innately that's just fun, and it's engrossing, and you want to do that. And, I think if you think about it, that's just what we do. We make really good games like that, and, that's what we're going back to.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly.
So do you guys ever have conversations in the office where you're making an effect or an animation and you're like, that's too much blood, or that's not enough blood, or that's too much fire, not enough fire?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. So we go back and forth a lot, and Nick and I work together all the time, and I think as a team we try to get things in the game really quick because what we care about most is gameplay. And so we really do things in a rough state. We make sure it's fun, and then we have thematics as part of the idea from the beginning, but we get it in quick, and then we kind of iterate from there. So there's definitely a ton of back and forth between animation, design, effects, sound, everyone.
And we often think about kind of the blood and guts as it's a tool we can use. We don't want it on everything because then it kind of can lose those impactful moments when you really want it to mean something. Yeah. So we try to look around at places and we're like, all right, there's blood all over the path, all the way up to the entrance of the cave. Yeah. Maybe that's a little too much because we want it to be important at the cave entrance. So maybe we take some of it away, and then we go, okay, so when you lead up, you see that moment at the cave entrance, you're like, oh my God, there's a lot of blood here. What's going on? So you don't kind of you don't take that moment away from that piece of art or that design mechanic that they want.
We're also all about cost fantasy, so if you're playing a barbarian, we want you to do awesome barbarian things. We want you to cut people in half and decapitate them and rip their guts out. Yes. And the sorceress doesn't do that. She has her own thing. She freezes people. She shatters them.
She burns them alive.
She burns their skin off.
Yeah. And then the druid is turning into a werewolf and slashing you across the enemy in two, and it's trampling people. The roadkill is running through all these monsters, and it's great. So like Dan said, you want each of the heroes to kind of have that thing that they do.
Do you have speaking of that game, is that real time? Do you have real time dismemberment and if those effects on death animations on depending on how they died and how you swung?
Yeah, so we have many different types of deaths, and I think if you play the demo, hopefully you can find and see some of them. And it is class dependent, and it's depending on what skill you use and sometimes what type of magic you use.
I feel that's a lot of work for you guys. Just to get how many skills are on, how many different augmentations this goes around, how many different enemy types. We need 10 animations of this guy dying, on fire, frozen dead, chopped in half, chopped vertically, chopped arm off.
Right, so we do build it in kind of a smart modular way, and I think the tech helps us there. You can ragdoll a monster so they go physics and they go flying across the screen. We can break them in half and send them in physics and play a bunch of blood. So I think we try to reuse deaths throughout the game, and but we also want to make it feel like there's a variety of them, and you feel like you can tell who's killing who. You want to know when a sorceress is killing a monster versus a barbarian.
And we also have those moments for like bosses where we want that to tell a little bit more of a story. So then we'll go in and we'll actually make a very specific death for that. So you'll see a bot like a Shava in the demo will die, and it's almost like a Shava is trying to get one last acid out fire thing out of her mouth, and she can't do it, and she's kind of gasping. She explodes at her chest, and it backfires inside her, and it blows her chest open. She falls over and just dies. And it's but then that we leave on the screen. We let you kind of witness that because it's kind of like a reward. You just beat this world boss, and you get to see this awesome death, and then get all your loot.
The Drowned Witch is another great example. So if you play the demo, one of the dungeons is the Drowned Caverns. You will run to this boss at the end, and she's really creepy. She has awesome abilities. I don't want to spoil it too much, but she also has an amazing death where she almost melts away her own flesh.
She vomits up all of the stuff from the ocean that they it's gooey sticky water stuff, and her guts come out. She just kind of disintegrates. It's pretty awesome.
And then loot pops out, and you're happy.
So from returning people from Diablo 3, are there any, obviously there's augmented mechanics, you've changed things, tweaked things. Are there any new mechanics you're introducing for the first time? For example, I remember on the console you could roll, which is something you could never really do before in a Diablo game.
Right, so we have that on PC now. You can roll. You press spacebar to kind of dodge things. Yeah. There's the arsenal system for the barbarian, the chill mechanic for the sorceress.
I think we're also trying to make sure that we're the same, across platforms. Right. We want it's not now that only on console you can roll. It's the same. You can roll on PC, you can roll on console. Everything should be smooth across all platforms.
Does that
Yeah.
extended controller support on PC?
Yes, we have controller support. Yeah.
And then when does Diablo 4 come out? Can I get the?
It's early days.
when it's done.
Exactly.
Games take time.
They do take time, and we'll have more to announce in the future.
Yeah.